Okay, I chose to do my research project on people of the Muslim faith. Um, Two reasons that I chose this particular group of people, or two things that drew me to this group of people. Um, First thing being their well built foundation of their faith. I just find it amazing how um, they don't really question what it is that they're doing or what it is that they're saying. They just kind of do it. Um, I am also very strong in my faith, but I have also found myself once or twice questioning certain things or wanting to know more answers. But I just kind of feel as if they just kind of, I don't want to say go with it, but it, I mean, in a sense, they do. The second thing that drew me to this group of people is the many ethnic groups that are involved with this faith. Me personally, I always thought that about 90% of the Muslim population consisted of Arabs, and then the other 10% was maybe made up of all the other ethnic groups. But in fact, according to PBS.org, it is said that only about 15% of the 1.2 billion Muslims worldwide are Arab. Um, a little bit of background on the Muslim faith. It was actually started in Mecca. We've all heard of Muhammad. He was born in Mecca where he lived with both of his parents and his grandfather. His grandfather was the chief of the clan that he was a part of. After losing both of his parents, he lived with his grandfather. And then after losing his grandfather, he lived with an uncle who was a merchant. And they would travel back and forth to Syria when he was old enough, making their trips. And in traveling, when he was about 25, he met his wife. Her name was Khadijah, where they later on got married. Um, a little while after getting married, Muhammad had a weird encounter. He said he had heard a voice telling him to recite certain things or to read certain things, and he did not really know how to feel or what to do, so he told his wife Khadijah about it. And she went and spoke to one of her kinsmen because she knew that he knew a little bit about the Bible, and he had told her that it sounded like what happened to Muhammad had happened to Moses. So his wife had actually become the first Muslim. She had accepted him as the first prophet, and so that's how that became about. He received many revelations from God, and he first started off by sharing with family and few close friends, and then later on he did his public preaching. A little bit about the Muslim faith. Um, as far as worship, they have something that is called the five pillars, and the first pillar is the profession of faith, and that's basically they recite in their worship that there's only one God and that Muhammad is the messenger of God. The second pillar being formal worship, them praying 5 times a day before sunrise, noon, afternoon, sunset, and then in the evening. And then they recite a passage from the Quran, and then they do another step of their formal worship where they recite different things. They do a they do a form of worship where they start by standing upright, then they kneel down on their knees, their foreheads touch the knees, and then they stand back upright, raising their hands to the air, saying that God is great, and then kneeling again, but the second time placing their foreheads onto the ground. The third pillar being almsgiving, and what almsgiving is anybody of the Muslim faith is required to give 10% of what they have to the poor or needy. The fourth pillar is the fast of Ramadan, and that's fasting for 30 days during the month of Ramadan. And the month of Ramadan, I believe, is the ninth month of the year. So when fasting, they have to fast the first day of the month at sunrise to the 30th day of the month at sunset. And then the fifth pillar is the pilgrimage, and that's when they make the visit to Mecca. Um, every Muslim who is physically or financially able is supposed to make a visit back to Mecca where the original worship place was at. And when going to Mecca to visit the original worship place, they will perform their second pillar, which is the formal worship in the I believe it's called the Kaaba, where they will that's where they'll go and they will perform their formal worship. Aside from the things that they uh, do with formal worship and everything, they also have different daily duties. People of the Muslim faith, they aren't able to consume pork, alcohol, um, any mind altering drugs. I actually talked to a friend and he said that they weren't allowed to drink coffee or anything with caffeine because they say it's mind altering. They also they're not they're prohibited from lying, from fortune telling, from gambling, all of those sorts of things. Um, and then another thing that I found interesting is that in the Muslim faith, they're all said to have a direct connection with God, and only God can forgive them for their sins. No religious leader in their faith can forgive them for any wrongdoing that they have done. Only God directly can forgive them. We all know that people who are of the Muslim faith are often stereotyped as terrorists, as solicitors, because people say that they try to push their faith on them. Um, Another stereotype about their women that I read is that their women aren't as confident because they don't value beauty in the way that American women do. But in fact, I read that there's a passage in the Quran who that tells their women that they're not supposed to dress provocative. They're supposed to cover um, cleavage and everything. They're not supposed to show their skin. Um, Another stereotype that I read was well, there's a lot of stereotypes. Um, One of the things that really stood out to me and it was a wow moment was, like I just mentioned, the pilgrimage when they make that journey back home. I just kind of find that amazing that I'm sure not all of them do, but most of them do go back and visit home to where their religion started and going to the original worship place and performing their formal worship. That just sounds so interesting. It would be something that I would love to do. Another thing that interested me and that I read is that in that time period of being able to recite, like to memorize and recite things was valued, and they also value poetry, which is something I found very interesting. So that's my overview on the Muslim faith.